we are your incoming co-presidents for the 2022-2023 year and are honored to serve GlobeNet's mission. I'd like to once again thank you all for being here tonight. At this time, we invite you to make your final bids in the silent auction.
It's actually over.
But it's already over, so never mind. And now we would like to invite our next speaker, Sachika Singh. Is a double therapist and former girl intern and campaigns coordinator for GlobeNet at UC. She completed her bachelor's in sociology in 2019 and her master's in sociology in 2020, where she studied abortion policy and continuity of care. After her master's, Sachika joined GlobeNet headquarters as a chapter coach, facilitating anti-oppressive partnerships between GlobeNet's 36 university chapters and their global grassroots partners. Now a clinical research coordinator at Cincinnati Children's, her research focuses around addressing community trauma and building community resilience. Let's give a round of applause for Sachika.
Okay, this works. Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Because I know I'm really quiet. So, we're good? Okay, cool. Yeah, Jonathan, if you can just like wave at me if you no longer hear me, that's very helpful because I tend to kind of trail off. But it's so good to be here, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for dedicating an evening to celebrating and investing in our partnership with Social Action for Children and Women. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here and share my reflections with you today. Honestly, like, it means the world to like be able to talk today with my family here and my GlobeNet friends and then all the faculty that have supported us for so much time. And I was like in the bathroom just like reflecting right before this, and I was thinking about how like when I joined GlobeNet freshman year, it was kind of, I feel like we had kind of stagnated and people weren't resonating with it as much. And the grade above me, Emily and Anna, who are sitting there, they were our co-presidents the next year. We all like, were you the co-president? Were you not?
No, we weren't.
No, you weren't. Okay. Okay, well, they worked so hard on the executive board, and I wasn't a part of that executive board, but that just kind of, I feel like, started the momentum back up for GlobeNet, and then I joined exec later, and like things just kept growing, and it's so rare for a student organization to be on an upward trajectory year after year after year. And what is this, like maybe louder? Should I be louder? Oh, sorry. No, but it's so rare for a student organization to like keep growing year after year when students are trickling in and out. It's unpaid work. It's not the priority necessarily of their learning experience in university. So I think this is maybe like our 6th year on an upward spike, and so it really is just like so exciting to see new GlobeNet faces too. I'm so excited for you guys to keep growing our organization, and yeah, it just means a lot. It's very exciting to be here today. So like Brooke said, my name is Sachika and I'm an alumnus of GlobeNet at UC. I served as campaigns coordinator in 2018. Was lucky enough to intern in Thailand with SAW in 2019, and I worked as a chapter and partnership fellow for GlobeNet headquarters, where I was challenged with sustaining GlobeNet partnerships around the world during the peak of the pandemic. Although I graduated, I haven't let GlobeNet get rid of me. I still crash GlobeNet meetings, give Ajit and Noah unsolicited leadership advice, and receive random video calls from ATL or partner contact, and when I get really lucky, DMs from the little kids at SAW that we worked with when we were on our internship. So all of that to say, I really do feel so lucky that GlobeNet continues to play such an important role in my life, and I really feel like the lessons that I learned and the connections that I made through my GlobeNet experience truly shaped me into the person and professional that I am. You can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, that was the next slide. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, I'm a sociologist, and my research is centered around addressing childhood adversity and community trauma by building community resilience. When a community is saturated with adverse environmental factors such as racist systems, violence, or inaccessible health care, the conditions are created for adverse childhood experiences such as parental neglect, sexual abuse, or mental illness. We all encounter stressors, and even intense or long-lasting stressors can be tolerable if we have the proper supports in our lives to help us cope. But when children are subjected to 2 or more adverse experiences in their childhood where there is no trustworthy adult to act as a buffer against the stress and remind them that they're loved and that they're safe and teach them coping mechanisms, what happens is that their stress response remains activated. So this prolonged activation of the stress response in childhood results in permanent changes to the body. So the areas of the brain that are dedicated to survival end up with more and stronger neural connections, whereas parts dedicated to reasoning and learning, on the other hand, end up with less and weaker neural connections. So the consequence of this is that children who endure toxic stress get wired differently. They tend to have behavior or impulse control problems and difficulties focusing, and this affects their social emotional development and their education, and they grow into adults who generally have poorer mental and physical health outcomes. What's nice to know is that the effects of ACEs are preventable. By building community resilience, we can ensure that children are nurtured and develop healthy attachments, that they learn constructive coping mechanisms and build trustworthy relationships with adults who are able to actually be present and active in their lives thanks to community supports. When children have these supports, they can manage their stressors and their brains can devote energy to growth and development. SAW staff are well aware of the impact of adverse childhood experiences, and they intentionally structure their programming to build resilience in the children at SAW. When a child moves into SAW shelter, they're given food, education, and warmly welcomed into the SAW family. They're gifted with not only attentive parenting by the adult staff, but also over 200 new siblings that they get to live and play and argue and bicker with every day. The sense of community and belonging that is fostered here at SAW is incredibly healing for everyone involved. The adults at SAW also understand that building resilience and community requires a humble commitment to others. I'm not sure that I've seen anywhere else such selfless devotion to one's work and chosen family. Every morning, the SAW staff wake up at 4 a.m. because the kids get up that early to start studying. The adults get everyone through breakfast, and like I said, over 200 kids. I don't actually, that's like a low estimate, I think. Every morning, the SAW staff wake up at 4 a.m. because the kids are studying, they get everyone through breakfast, they get them to school around 7 or 8 a.m., and then the rest of their day is spent working on SAW programming or funding initiatives, while also making sure the several and very rambunctious early childhood age children are also occupied and fed throughout the day. Not to mention that any kids homesick are also taken care of and tutored. At evening, food is prepared for the full compound by a group of kids. Everyone eats together, and then the kids return to studying or playing. SAW staff supervise the kids while wrapping up their day's work. By maybe 10 p.m., the kids are prepared for bed, and then it all starts over again. As tired and overwhelming as the schedule may be at times, I believe that SAW staff are fueled by their love for their children. SAW structure is also grounded upon the idea that being in community with others requires sacrifice. Someone who really exemplifies this for me is Yi Wen, who is on the screen. Yi Wen came across SAW when she went to Mesa in her 20s and ended up living next door to one of their homes. She quickly fell in love with the children and began working there. She always planned to go to college, but the needs of the children at SAW always came first, and she never ended up going, instead dedicating her life to caring for the children and leading many of SAW's operations. About 20 years later, when another staff member named Sue wanted to make the same decision, defer to college to be able to be there for the kids, Yi Wen pushed back on this. The staff adjusted their responsibilities to make up for Sue's absence and dedicated a portion of their funds to Sue's tuition. Because of this, Sue was able to attend Chiang Mai University and pursue her dream of getting a degree. Another story about Yi Wen is that recently, Coco, who is the boy pictured on the right, Coco was a boy who was abandoned by his mother at a young age, and he was raised pretty much all the way through his childhood at SAW. So recently, when we went on Grow in 2019, he was at the age of graduation and he was ready to start applying for college, but he didn't have the proper documentation because his mom, I think, had never really officially maybe left him, or so on. And so He went to EU and was like, I don't know what to do. And she adopted him. Not only legally, but emotionally, bringing him to her family in Myanmar for vacations and further expanding his chosen family. Coco's really quiet. He's one of those people who probably couldn't be bothered with a lot of, he's okay being by himself. But Wen always drags him home to meet her family, and she tells stories about how he tries to ignore his cousins because he's really shy, but when she talks about Coco and how he's grown, you can tell that it means a lot to him. This is what being in community or standing in solidarity with someone else is. It's committing to others, committing to sacrifice for their well-being, to loving and accepting them fully, and to uplift them when times are difficult. This is a commitment to not only give, but to receive. Living in community means being vulnerable with others and being open to being supported and provided for. Almost 50% of Burmese migrant children in Mesa report experiencing at least one adverse childhood experience. So when you consider that many of the children at SAW have endured ACEs like being sexually or physically abused or trafficked, or losing parents or family members to political violence in Myanmar, you understand why SAW's organizational commitment to building resilience within others makes them such a vital resource for the Burmese migrant community. This two-way commitment that SAW holds so well with everyone they encounter is not something that I feel comes to us very easily in the Western world. Our society is extremely individualistic, and a lot of times people have very conditional and narrow definitions of who they will allow or consider a part of their community. Accepting help and depending on others is not necessarily looked on as a good thing here. But here's the thing. The prevalence of adverse community environments and the danger that this poses to children is not an issue unique to the Global South. In the US, the rate of children reporting one or more adverse childhood experiences is also 50%. And in Cincinnati, this rate is even higher at 61%. So the reality is that the impacts of oppressive systems in Cincinnati are so detrimental that the rate of ACEs in our community exceeds that of the community made of migrants fleeing from a war-torn nation. When I look at these rates, I wonder if the sense of community that the Burmese migrant people foster within themselves is what makes this difference. This two-way commitment that is living in community with another is exactly what a GLOMED partnership is. When a chapter enters into partnership with a global grassroots organization, both organizations commit to learning and growing together. For UC and SAW, we always describe this partnership as entailing UC students supporting SAW projects and SAW adults facilitating constructive learning opportunities for our chapter members. And we, as GLOMED at UC, always follow through in our commitments to SAW, like our $10,000 fundraising goal that everyone is helping us with tonight. But I think for a long time, we missed the concepts of vulnerability and true connection that are integral to partnership. When the pandemic happened, GLOMED at UC was of course unable to make our fundraising goal. We were all saddened by this and also felt extremely guilty. We felt like we had let down the partnership and burdened SAW by not reaching the amount that they had relied upon to conduct their community health outreach program workshops and co-pro. I think our chapter really struggled to bring this information to ATL and SAW, but to our surprise, ATL and SAW extended us grace immediately. They understood that the pandemic had affected us too. I think that this was difficult for us to accept as well, because we benefit so much from the stories and lessons that SAW shares for us, and we're so incredibly grateful for everything that they give to us. So how can we not deliver for them, especially during such a difficult time? But that summer, UC also wasn't able to go and grow. So ATL asked the Grow team to recreate the online English practice sessions that my Grow intern team had led for the kids in person. Our chapter jumped at this opportunity, and several Grow interns and chapter members volunteered to wake up early during their summer to practice English with these sweet children who they had never met before. Knowing the kids at SAW, I'm sure these English practice sessions were the highlight of their summer. And I think it still would have been even if there weren't a pandemic going on. By being honest about our capacities with SAW, we created the space for SAW to find new and innovative ways for us to remain in partnership with them. I think that was the year that our chapter really and truly embraced what partnership and being in community with others means. We learned that our partnership would encounter setbacks, that this was inevitable, and that the point was to reach out and be vulnerable with SAW. Just as we stand with SAW in their moments of joy and sorrow, they would stand with us. I'm so grateful for the value for connection and togetherness that I learned from SAW. Working in ACES and building community resilience, I see that it's our projects that foster the solidarity and vulnerability between people that promotes the most that promote the most healing. Comparing the ACEs rates between Migsaw and Cincinnati reminds me that while we may be on opposite